Capture One offers a variety of essential image adjustment tools that, used together, can correct images in a simple way or for creative effect. Most of these tools can be found in the Exposure Tool tab and the Color Tool tab. Before moving on to more creative adjustments, it is good practice to begin with an image that has the correct exposure and white balance. Incorrect exposure can be adjusted by dragging the exposure slider in the Exposure tool to the right or left to compensate. White balance is adjusted by the use of Kelvin and tint sliders, choosing presets or picking a neutral part of the image. To set the white balance with a preset, choose one of the available options in the Mode pull-down menu. The As Shot option will be the values that were set by your camera at time of capture. Any preset can be adjusted with the Kelvin and tint sliders. To set the white balance based on a neutral reference in the image, select the Pick White Balance cursor tool and click on a neutral spot. Contrast, brightness and saturation are also adjusted in the Exposure tool. The contrast slider has an intelligent algorithm that helps to preserve hue and saturation while still increasing contrast. The brightness slider helps to brighten midtones, also preserving hue and saturation. The saturation slider also has an intelligent algorithm where already saturated colors receive less treatment than lower saturated colors. This avoids oversaturation of the image. The High Dynamic Range tool allows targeted adjustments of the shadows and highlights. The highlight slider helps to recover detail and density in the highlights without affecting the midtones or shadows of the image. The shadow slider brightens the darker parts of the image without affecting the midtones or highlights. The Levels tool is capable of adjusting contrast, brightness, and tonal range. The Levels tool has 3 adjustments: black point, white point, and midtones. The position of these sliders redefines the input levels so they are mapped to the output levels shown at the top of the Levels tool. These are 0 and 255 by default. The midtone slider brightens or darkens the midtones. In the example image, there is little or no information at either end of the histogram. Most images look best if we can utilize the full range of tones from 0 to 255. By moving the level sliders towards the histogram, we can adopt the best input level setting for a given image. It may be helpful to turn on exposure warnings to avoid clipping the shadows and highlights. Use the midtone slider to brighten or darken the midtones. Final output values can be adjusted with the output sliders at the top of the histogram. Once the levels are set, the Curve tool has the ability to make precise changes in tone and contrast. Note that the levels are also shown over the curve. By moving the cursor anywhere over the image, we can recognize the location of a tone represented by a vertical line underneath the curve. Curves can be adjusted either in RGB values, luminance only, or individual color channels. Using the Luma option means hue and saturation of the image is preserved. It creates a different look to the standard RGB method, which can affect hue and saturation as well as contrast. After deciding on the method, simply adjust the curve by click dragging on any number of points. To set a point on the curve based on a pick tone, use the Pick Curve Point Picker in the Curve tool. To remove a selected point, simply hit the Delete or Backspace key. The Curve tool also has movable anchor points in the upper right and lower left corners of the diagonal line. These anchor points make it easier to remap the darkest and lightest values in the tonal range. Adding clarity to an image is a popular method of giving an image more punch and contrast. There are 4 clarity methods: natural, punch, neutral, and classic. Any selected clarity method will have an effect on the midtone micro contrast, either by increasing it or reducing it. Natural is the default correction that creates a subtle change to the clarity and color without oversaturation. The other modes have a slightly different effect of clarity adjustment. For example, punch will increase saturation too. Moving the structure slider will help to increase the definition of complex structures like foliage, textiles, or other fine details in an image. The vignetting tool can be used to add the often used creative effect of a vignette on an image. The exposure value of the vignette can be adjusted by dragging the slider to the left to darken the vignette and to the right to lighten the vignette. The method drop-down menu allows 3 modes to change the appearance of the vignette.